With me today is my colleague Sue Perlmutter. Sue and I first met, years ago when we were both on the boards of separate dance companies.
That's right.
A long time ago.
And now we're dancing to a different tune.
Yes, we are. Now, Sue, you've spent years living in Asia.
I did. I lived in Hong Kong for a year and in Japan for 6 years.
That's quite a bit of time. And you speak Japanese and Chinese.
And I speak neither of them well, but I speak Japanese a little more fluently than Chinese.
I find that hard to believe. As an Asia specialist, Sue, what are some of the basics that American business executives need to know in going to Asia to do business?
There are so many basics that people need to know, but for the purposes of this interview, I would say relationships are the key, and connections, establishing trust, making sure that relationships are solid before business takes place, because on the Asian side, no one will do business with you unless they trust you.
Exactly. So what are some of the cultural differences among China, Korea, Japan?
There are commonalities in that all of them fall under the Confucius umbrella. All the Koreans, Japanese, and Chinese, which means Taiwanese, Singaporeans, mainland Chinese, etc., have all grown up with the precepts of Confucian rule. And they play out in different ways in different countries. In Korea, Confucius has a very, very strong influence, a little less so in Japan, and surprisingly in mainland China. But in Taiwan, Confucius is a very strong element of how people think and do business.
What about the differences among the cultures?
Again,
everybody thinks that, we're going to Asia and it's just all one thing, just like they go to Europe and it's all one thing.
Or the United States and they think we're all the same, but actually that's not true at all. When you're doing business in Korea and Japan, for example, I would say the first thing people should know is that the countries historically have hated each other. There is all kinds of rivalry, and that's a crucial point for people to be aware of, rather than lumping the two together. That would be a terrible mistake.
Just a little thing like calling the Sea of Japan, or in Korea, which they call the East Sea.
Correct.
So, I mean, little things like geography.
Correct. And we won't even mention Russia in that equation. But the two are very different. That said, in recent years, because of what's happened in the youth culture movement, the relations have changed somewhat. And I think you'll find that Koreans and Japanese are now more willing to do business with each other for practical and cultural reasons. Similarly, Koreans and Chinese are interacting quite a bit. And because of China's rise on the global scene, everyone wants a piece of mainland China, no matter who.
Yeah. Well, just in the papers recently, all the conversations about, or all the writing about the ASEAN conference, they're all talking about how everybody was making nicey-nice with one another and trying not to tread on anybody's toes. But given that, in dealing with Japan, for instance, what are some of the changes and developments in the economy and culture there?
Japan has undergone a huge cultural shift. I guess some would argue a greater cultural shift in the last, say, 20 years than has happened since the beginning of its existence. One of the key components is the fact that the population has been declining at an alarmingly rapid rate. And so you see demographically a huge segment of senior citizens, otherwise known as silver-haired population. So the silver hairs are gaining in numbers while the youth population is really dwindling. What this means is that people will have to look to other cultures, will have to look to foreign companies for human capital. And this is going to really be a drastic shift for Japan.
Well, immigration has always been a big issue in Japan.
It has, and the stark reminder is when you get off the plane, and even if you are an expat who's lived in Japan for 20 years, you still would have to get into the alien registration line. Feeling like an alien gives a message about what it's like to be in the country.
Well, when you were living there, so what are some of the other cultural trends that are going on in business?
Well, what's happened, getting back to this demographic shift, is that, for one thing, people are really shopping more online, with senior citizens unable to get out, and surprisingly very savvy in terms of technology. The online shopping industry has boomed there. Adding to this is the whole fear about swine flu contagion, and when you're living in a place with so many millions of people in close proximity, naturally it's understandable that people would be a little hesitant about swine flu factors. So people are shopping online more. There's also a huge price war going on in Japan, which you can easily see in many industries. This is something that, say, even 20 years ago when I lived there, was unheard of. So people are not only looking for the legendary stamp of quality, but are also looking for price points as well. And because of that, companies are really treating the marketplace as a battlefield in Japan. And so you can find jeans for $10, lunches for $2, complete lunches, and the prices are just unbelievable there right now.
Also, the luxury market seems to have changed. I mean, you've written on our blog about the changes in the luxury market, and a lot of the luxury companies are closing in Japan and moving to China.
It's actually less of an issue than we are led to believe. Versace recently pulled out completely, and that was a big deal. However, the luxury market is thriving, and in the travel industry, for example, you still see a lot of high-end clients and customers. The big shift is that Japanese people are more willing to look for bargains no matter what socioeconomic status they happen to fall into. So that's really the big shift. And if you go to buy clothing, for example, you see a huge mob of people in the lower price stores than you would historically. The department stores are just about dying right now.
Well, given what you've told us, what are some of the basics that any business executive or any company has to consider in going into Asia?
For Asia in particular, again, it's developing relationships, establishing connections, being patient, allowing much more time than you would in the United States or in Western or Eastern Europe. And to know that for many of the countries, just because the mindset is different, it doesn't mean that anything goes. You have to do even more cultural due diligence than you would normally.
Very good points. Well, thanks for talking with me today.
My pleasure. You asked me the questions about the topics that are my favorites, so why not?
Well, you are our Asia expert.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this video, one in a series of informational videos from the global coaching and consulting groups that we do for global executives and global teams. To find out more about how we can help you with your global success, please visit our website at www.globalcoachingandconsulting.com or give us a call at 212-628-7209.